Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to episode 24 of the Dota Show. I cannot believe it, but we've almost made it 5 weeks. I haven't died. We've had an episode every night. Some of them on my part, I think two to be specific. Maybe not the most educational, but still an episode every night on top of casting. I'm going to give myself a little pat on the back. Of course, we have a long way to go before I'm satisfied with the quality of the content on the show, and we're always trying to get better. But with that being said, I feel once in a while it's important to just sort of look back and think, man, 5 weeks ago, I was terrified about the idea of putting myself up on the internet stage in front of a camera, and well, look at me now. I wouldn't say I'm smooth and cool and collected, but as close as I can get for now. So that's the good news. Couple of things that happened to me over the past few days, just some random little slices of life from the world of LD, famous Dota 2 caster. No, I'm kidding. But today I took a really nice shower, and I don't know if you got my camera, god damn it. And I bring this up because for me, I'm very utilitarian with things like showering. So I hop in, I shower, I clean myself as quickly as possible, and I get out and I go about my business. It's not something that I normally sit back and like, oh man, the shower. It's so nice. But today, I had one of those showers where you just don't want to get out. The water's just the perfect temperature. It feels so good, bouncing off your skin. Oh man, that's why we were late, 5 minutes late today. I needed a hot shower. Boy, did I enjoy that. So I don't know if you guys are like me, but once in a while, it's just so good. Very refreshing. If I was I wish I had a product to plug here, but unfortunately I don't. If you own a shower equipment company, a shower head manufacturer, you know where to find me. LD at LDdota.com. Today when I was casting, I had a little bit of an issue. I want to call it an issue. So I don't know if anybody watched the broadcast this morning. It happened pretty early in the day. And I'm actually just checking now. My microphone is unmuted, and it is in front of my face, so you guys should be able to hear me. Alright, so here's what happened. For anyone who didn't tune in, I was casting with Nebula, EG versus DK. By the way, game 2, awesome game. Very exciting to watch. I don't want to spoil it. It's currently uploading to YouTube. Will be available probably shortly after this episode finishes airing. And you can catch that at youtube.com/LDdota. But I had to mute my microphone because my cat just would not stop bothering me. I don't get this cat. First of all, cats are not supposed to be very emotionally needy animals. That's my understanding of cats. They're kind of solitary creatures. Dogs are the ones where, oh, yeah, they want to play with you, they want to be pet, they want attention, they want love. It's like having a baby, having a dog, especially younger ones. But cats are not supposed to be like that, except for my cat. I love her to death for it. She's very, very attention hungry, though. And today, she just wouldn't stop meowing. Now, the way that I normally get rid of her is I spritz a little bit of water in her face or just in her general direction. She hates it. She'll run away. But I was very thirsty, and by the time the second game was halfway done, I had run out of water. So my next option was to wait until Nebula started talking, get up, and shoo the cat out of the room, which I did. Unfortunately, I forgot to unmute my microphone. This goes on for about 10 minutes before I realized that the microphone is muted the whole time. Oh, it was the most cringe-inducing technical snafu of my casting career thus far. I'm sure there will be worse ones. There's a certain caster who shall remain nameless who may or may not have shown pornography on the stream. not gonna call him out by name. So other casters have certainly had their snafus, but this was a cringe-inducing one to say the least. That damn cat. You know, I wish I had a studio. I wish I was a full-time casting professional, but I work with what I've got, and I guess I could stuff the cat into the bathroom, but that seems like cruel and unusual punishment to me. So the final thing, and I just thought this was pretty funny, is a couple of you guys were ragging me for being late, and part of it was the shower, because after I have my shower, I just like to situate myself, mentally sort of prepare for the show. But the other thing is that last song that was played, I just love that song. And this happens to me when I'm casting, in fact, where I'll have an awesome song going, and I could jump into the game, but I just want to get to the right part of the song to stop and sort of integrate it into the cast, so it's like a nice sort of jumping off point. Of course, people sometimes rage when you do this, but man, I enjoy some good music. I appreciate my music. I hope you guys do too. And what can I say? Sometimes the music, it comes before the Dota. So that's pretty much it for what's sort of new and exciting in my life. Today, we're going to be talking about something a little bit different. So last week, for getting that Ask Larry, by the way, it was suggested to me that I should come up with a new name for the segment. The reason being, I'm getting a message on Skype. I hope it's working. Okay, good. Just want to make the stream. I'm very paranoid right now after that casting snafu earlier. Yes, stream seems to be fine. But last week we looked at Safe Lane Spectre. That was for getting that S. Sorry. And by the way, I am looking for a new show title because that reference, I love it. But a lot of people don't watch Curb Your Enthusiasm, especially if they're a little bit younger or they're not from the United States. Yeah, I guess I'm an old man. So if you guys have any suggestions, email them to me at ld@lddota.com, and I will definitely take a look. But I am in the market for a new title for that segment. Something that's a little bit more, has some more mass appeal. Although I do love the current title. But anyway, on Monday we looked at support laning Earthshaker. And today we're going to be going back to what I'm most familiar with, generally speaking, which is a little good old-fashioned solo mid. Today specifically, we're going to be looking at Dragon Knight, and unlike our past couple of days, unlike the past couple of times you probably watched Dragon Knight being played in pro games, where you'll see sort of these. There's a number of different ways to build the hero, right? You have your tanky, sort of traditional Chinese build, I want to call it, where you go for things like a pipe early on, maybe a BKB. Sometimes we even see drums. Very tanky items, cheap, cost-effective, offer a lot to the team. Very good for pushing early and aggressively. Sort of like having a lone druid where you go for this timing push at 25, 30 minutes into the game. That's the Chinese way to play him, and it's a great way to play. It's very effective. It's not as common nowadays in the pro scene because teams really are favoring their mobility and their burst damage in a lot of games. But I think it still has a place. That's the Chinese style. We're not going to look at that style. I think it's boring to watch. I think it's boring to talk about, and more importantly, I don't really think it's the best pub style unless you have a 5-stack. What I'm going to show you guys today is something that I've gotten from watching Mineski in Dota 1. I believe the first time I saw this, it was julz of Mineski, who's no longer with the team. I'm sorry, julz. You were my favorite player for Mineski. I can't really root for them anymore. No, I'm just kidding. I love Mineski. But he was the first player I saw do this. Obviously, I'm not saying he's the first player to have done it, but it's a very popular build, and I've seen other players from Mineski do it since then, and I've seen other Pinoys do it as well, in pro games, in fact. So I think it's really powerful in pub games, or which tend to be a lot more chaotic, which is how Southeast Asian Dota is. So that's what we're going to be looking at today, is this Pinoy style. So, with all that being said, let's talk a little bit about Dragon Knight as a hero, and I think we'll see really why, sort of some of the strengths of this build. Alright, so here's Dragon Knight. We're going to go through his spells real quickly. This is something I like to do at the beginning of every segment. Dragon Knight is a very tanky hero by nature, but one thing he lacks is mobility, and that's something that this build attempts to address. So, as far as his strengths go, he's tanky, like I mentioned. He's a great tower pusher with max flame breath, a nice AoE nuke, can mow down the creep waves, also damages catapults, so great for flash farming, flash pushing. And the level 1 Dragon Form does damage over time to tower, so very good pushing hero, especially for a hero that scales well as a carry. He can farm very effectively with his level 2 ultimate and his level 3 ultimate. And the nice thing about Dragon Knight, he's just very well-rounded. He's tanky, he does some good damage with items, he scales well into the late game, but he has a pretty high impact early on, unlike other heroes like an Anti-Mage or Spectre, who don't offer you a whole lot in most games early into the game. So Dragon Knight has some, he's really, I want to call him a jack of all trades, but with this build, we're going to see that he does have some weaknesses that I try to address. So, couple of downsides to playing the Dragon Knight. The first big one, he's very immobile. This used to be a bigger issue when Dragon Tail was a melee stun. Now, for anybody who doesn't know, in the last Dota 1 patch, which has since been propagated to Dota 2, Dragon Tail is now a range stun when you're in your ultimate form. The thing about this is, it's still a pretty good initiating spell, and more so than it used to be with this buff. But nonetheless, Dragon Knight doesn't have a blink, he doesn't have waveform, he doesn't normally build things like Force Staff or Blink Dagger. You can, but as a hero who generally wants to provide some sort of hard carry, some late game presence, building these kinds of items is not really going to help you, especially since he's a strength hero. So, he's got some weaknesses. The immobility is the big one. He's highly level dependent, and this goes back to him having this ultimate form. I talked about the level 1 form, great for pushing early on, but really you want to get to level 16 as quickly as possible. I don't think there's a hero in the game who's level 16. In fact, I'm just going to say right now, there's no hero whose level 16 ultimate is more important than Dragon Knight's. That AoE upgrade, the blue dragon form, every single attack does AoE damage, and it slows. It's basically, Lumi calls it a mini Frost Epicenter with every attack, and it is sort of like an Epicenter Pulse, because it slows, it does damage over time, and it goes through BKB just like Epicenter Slow does, so it's kind of a good analogy there. So he's highly level dependent, he's immobile, and the last thing is he requires a lot of farm. So with the build I'm going to show you, the Pinoy style, it attempts to address some of these weaknesses. With that being said, let's quickly go through the skill build. Generally for Dragon Knight, I max Fire Breath by level 7. This is almost always the way you'll see him played. It scales very well, it does a lot of damage. An AoE nuke, pretty spammable, especially if you get something like a bottle or a soul rain. So that's normally the first skill you're going to want to max. Now, as far as the other abilities, 1 point in Dragon Tail, 1 point in Dragon's Blood. This is what you want by the time you hit level 7. Because Dragon's Blood, even at level 1, gives you a good amount of armor and regen, helpful for staying in lane. If you're really being harassed a lot, you can max it first, but that's pretty rare. Generally, you're going to want to max this nuke because that's where most of your killing power, most of your farming power comes from early on. As for Dragon Tail, you take 1 point in this early, sometimes even at level 1, but certainly by the time you hit level 3 or 4. And then you just leave it at 1. You can max it if you want to go gank heavy. It scales okay, but it's really, really good at level 1. The only thing that goes up is the damage, which is pretty insignificant, and the stun duration, which is nice, but it's not a big jump. So normally you get 1 point in Dragon Tail, 1 point in Dragon Blood, max Breathe Fire by level 7, and then you get 1 point in Elder Dragon form at 6. Now the reason you do this is because not only can you push towers with this ultimate with the level 1 form, that poison damage over time on attack DC, it does affect towers. The other thing about it is that it allows you to stun from a range, so it's good for initiating in that regard. And let's say you're up against a good harasser, you pop your range form, suddenly you can trade blows pretty evenly. So you always want to get 1 point this level 6. Now generally, you'll see most players skip leveling this up until much later. They won't take the level 2 form at level 11. The reason for that is the level 2 form doesn't help you push. So it won't do extra damage to towers. It does help you clear creep waves, but you really don't need that most of the time with Flame Breath. So normally you want to leave this spell at level 1 until the pushing phase is over, or until you want to do something like Flash Farm. So if your allies are stacking Ancients for you, then you want to level this up. Otherwise, you can wait as late as level 15 and 16 to take 2 points in Elder Dragon form. So that's generally the skill build. You max this first, Breathe Fire. You max this second. You get 1 point in this at 6. You get 1 point in this at level 3 or 4. And then you pretty much, you don't actually level up Elder Dragon form until 16. That's the skill build. Generally, that's what you'll see most players do. Now, as far as the item build goes, I'm going to unpause the replay. We'll just watch this, and I can talk about the item build as I go. So I'm going solo mid this game. And we are watching my camera, I believe.
30 seconds to battle.
I'm trying to figure out what my team's lanes are. I'm playing with friends, and my friends, it's always chaos when we try to play together. So we're trying to figure out who's going where. They don't want me to go solo mid. Somebody else, I think the Bane wanted to have it, but I am going to end up going mid in the end. And as solo mid Dragon Knight, the first thing I'm thinking about is, well, who am I going to lane against? Is it going to be one of the ranged heroes? Maybe even a dual link, the CM, the Juggernaut? Probably not. Generally in pub games, if you see a Pudge, he's going to go mid. So that's the rule of thumb I'm going by. I expect Pudge to be there. That's why I get a Quelling Blade early on, because I want to make sure that I last hit as well as possible. Now, I am still rushing a bottle. I random. I could have started with the bottle, and, you know, maybe not taking the 2 branches, but really a bottle at level 1 doesn't do anything for you, because you're not even going to use the nuke until you level up a few times. So better to just get the Quelling Blade now and some stats to help with last hitting. Get the bottle later on when you actually need it. So standard solo mid protocol, just try and block the wave as well as you can. I did enough so that it's on my side. Melee versus melee, this is not the biggest deal. And we're going to see a little bit of farming going on. Let's see, why can I not change this? Oh, Dota, you are trolling me. Okay, we'll go with free camera for now. So, with Dragon Knight early on, especially the way that I'm going to play him, you really want to focus on last hits, prioritize them over denies. Especially against a hero like Pudge, it's not really a big deal if Pudge gets some farm. So I'm just going to focus on last hitting and lane. Again, the goal is I'm rushing that bottle. You can see it's already out on the way. Only takes a couple of trees to get because I did random. So from here, I take a point in Dragon Tail, I take a point in Dragon Blood, just so that I can trade auto attacks with a Pudge. Now, you can go for 2 points of Breathe Fire early, but he's not really pushing the lane anyway, so I don't really need that. You can harass a little bit, but what I'm going to do is go back for that at level 3, 4, and 5. So certainly, this build could be done a little bit differently. If you want, you can take Breathe Fire at 1 and 3, and just 1 point in Dragon Tail. Or Dragon Tail at 1, and then this at 2, 3. But that's not too important. The point is, focus on last hitting right now. Just focus on getting those items up. The next item I really want, and you always want this lane against the Pudge, is an early pair of boots. The reason for that is if he ever hooks you, if you ever get ganked, you can normally walk away, because Pudge has very low move speed. 285 without any items. 290 for me. I'm a little bit slow. But with the stun and a pair of boots, I'll be absolutely fine. The reason that I like Dragon Knight mid in this matchup is, well, there's a couple of reasons. And I'm actually going to miss last hit there. No big deal, though. But the reason I really like Dragon Knight in this matchup is he can trade blows really well with Pudge. If you ever get hooked, you can Dragon Tail to get away. You can also push the lane harder than him, which is a big thing against a hero like Pudge. because it means you're going to have better rune control. He goes for a hook and a creep, and then he's going to go check top rune. Does not have wards, poor guy. Unfortunately, rune is not top. So, by getting more points into Breathe Fire later on, whenever the rune's about to spawn, you can just use Breathe Fire and then push out the wave. If he goes to get the rune, he's going to miss some experience because the creeps will be at his tower. They'll be dying very quickly to it. So Dragon Knight really is strong in this matchup. Now, if I'd gone for the aggressive build, I probably could have first blooded him here. So, you could argue a bit of a blunder in terms of the skill build. Generally, the reason you would want to get the early point of Dragon's Blood is to deal with harassment, which I'm not really being harassed in this lane. So I'm going to say it's not the optimal skill build, but again, it's really not a big deal. I'm still farming very well, 13 creeps in about 3 minutes, and that's the main goal. Now, because I missed this rune, he gets a regen, but you can see I'm just not afraid of this Pudge. Even if he hooks me, he's going to take a lot of damage. And, well, he doesn't really know where my bottom lane is for a second there. So I'm going to let him get the rune, and as a result, I spend my gold. You might have seen I went from 240 to about 220, or to 20 gold. I upgrade the courier, and now I'm going to do some bottle crowing. Now, if you're in the side lane as DK, normally what you'll see pros do is they get something like an early Soul Rain. Soul Rain has great synergy with Dragon's Blood because you use Soul Rain, you lose some HP, you get some mana back, and DK, very spammable with Flame Breath, but not very good mana to work with, mana pool to work with. But if you get the Soul Rain, you can actually just use that Soul Rain and then Dragon's Blood will heal you back up. But for me, I'm solo mid, I want to be able to control the runes generally. And also, if you bottle Crow, you can spam just as much as the Soul Rain. And it's a little bit cheaper. So that's why I go for the bottle. If I ever get a rune, it'll pay for itself. A couple of runes would be fantastic. And with bottle crowing, it's absolutely fine. Now, if you want to bottle crow, the big thing you got to do is talk to your team before you do it. Make sure it's okay to use the bottle, or they use the courier for this. Now, I upgraded it, but that doesn't mean it's just mine the whole game. The team might need it. So don't be too selfish. Because the other thing is, if your team gets mad and they want to use the courier, they're just going to take it from you. And then you're going to be caught between a rock and a hard place. So, 4 minutes in, waiting for the courier, I push the lane in, I see that the runes spawn bottom, so I'm going to actually send the courier to me with bottle. And if you're ever in this situation and you're ferrying your bottle right as the rune spawns, what you want to do is deliver the bottle, use all your charges, and then pick up the rune. That way you basically get 6 charges for 1 bottle crow trip. So we're going to see bottle up here, wait for the bottle to cool down, and then we're going to use it one more time. Then we head back to mid. So, about 4.5 minutes in, I have 19 CS. Pudge is keeping pace with me, but I really don't mind if he farms. My goal, again, is just to farm myself. And we're actually going to fast forward just a touch. Oh, I get hooked here, so what do? Dragon Tail, and then walk away. If he had his ult and he's really quick, there's a slight chance he could kill me, but he doesn't, and even then, shouldn't be too difficult to get away. So this is where Dragon Knight is a great hero to play against Pudge, and especially once you get your Rage form. Then you could just initiate on him, and, well, if he takes a bunch of damage from you, even if he tries to trade blows, it's not going to work out too well. So I take the ult at level 6, and we're going to see pretty soon I start pushing, but let's actually go ahead, put it back in player perspective. And I don't know why it takes away that last hitting. Oh well, that's kind of annoying. But we're just going to watch for a moment. So I continue to farm in the mid lane. Again, that's really my focus here. Venomancer comes mid to gank. Bit of miscommunication here, and I was not really paid attention. Again, watch that mini-map. But this is a pretty dangerous gank path for him to take, running directly up the river. If you're going to be a squishy here like Venomancer and trying to gank, I highly recommend coming around a different angle so that Pudge can't see you before the rune spawns. Also, the rune was about to spawn, so Pudge is in position to try and go for it. So I'm pushing the wave at 6 minutes in. Now, I just want to pause because I know a lot of people have asked questions about, like, well, how do I control runes mid? Look at where the creep wave is right now. I mention this from time to time when I'm doing these sorts of tutorials, but I'm going to reiterate it now. If Pudge wants to go get the rune, he's got to literally run by the creep wave. There's going to be 3 creeps attacking him, 4 actually, plus my hero that can do so, and try and go get that rune. So by pushing the lane, especially if Pudge doesn't have, especially if you're up against a hero like Pudge, who doesn't have mobility, if he tries to go for the rune, he's going to be taking damage from the creeps, he's going to be missing experience at gold, potentially, as the tower kills them off, and he's going to be risking his own life. So this is why heroes that have AoE spells, like Breathe Fire, like Queen of Pain's Scream, are so good at controlling runes. But you want to time it properly. Don't just spam your nuke on cooldown. Make sure you're pushing the wave right as the rune's about to spawn. So, I'm going for Gloves of Haste, and no, this is not Power Treads. This is going to be the only other big item that you get early. Ding, ding, ding. You guessed it. It's a Hand of Midas. And we'll talk about why that's a good item choice in just a little bit. But for the moment, I have to farm it up. So I have an Invis rune. I'm just going to be auto-attacking to push the wave. Pudge is missing. And this is something you want to keep in mind. If you're ever a hero that wants to farm in the middle lane, a hero like Dragon Knight, Shadow Fiend, not really the best early game gankers, and you're up against a strong ganker, if that hero leaves the lane, well, first of all, call missing, but then more importantly, punish them for being out of the lane by trying to push that lane as hard as possible. Now I see a couple of heroes off the map, Crystal Main as well as Pudge, so I back up. But if CM was visible, I would be pushing that tower extremely hard right now, trying to punish that Pudge for what I thought he was doing, which was ganking. He was actually going to fountain. But whenever they're out of the lane, whether it's ganking or whether it's just making a trip to the fountain, try and punish them for it. So, I'm just going to be farming it on mid, and I might be in a little bit of trouble here. But because I have this invis rune and I hold on to it, I can just bottle up. I'll be absolutely fine. Another good thing to do, if you're worried about being ganked and you have a rune like that, whether it's an invis, a haste, or sometimes even illusion can help, don't use it. Make sure you're very judicious with when you actually use those. You're going to notice when I'm laning against Pudge, my position is not perfect, but generally I expect him to be, and let me actually go to free camera here. Generally you can expect Pudge to either be up here or over here angling for a hook when you're mid. Those are the two main spots, so being up in the creep wave closer to it is generally the safest position to be in. And I walk up, I'll Flame Breath the creeps, auto attack, but then I quickly bounce back behind them. Don't ever keep yourself exposed on the far side of the creep wave for too long, because that's where Pudge is going to hook you. So I push the wave, it's 8 minutes in, and what do you know, the rune spawns bottom, and I'm going to go grab it. And actually Pudge did have a ward. For some reason they look different in the spectator mode. Aren't they supposed to be... Yeah, they're a lot bigger normally. Well, whatever. There was wards. So I pick up a haste rune. I'm actually going to go ganky because I have one. I see bottom lane that there's 3 heroes pushing, but I'm a haste to DK. I don't give a hoot. I charge in, I stun the Juggernaut, and then I go back for Enchantress because for some reason, that's the hero we want to focus. We do get the kill. And now the haste turns still up. I'm going to continue to give chase. I think I'm going to continue to give chase. Oh, I thought we were done, but then my team went in. Pudge shows up. And because he hooks not the best opportune time, CM's caught out of position. So we get a double kill. And there you go. Hanamitis is on its way to B. The haste turn wears off, so I stop. Although DK is not the best ganker, and generally you're going to want to stay mid and farm if you go solo mid, farming and pushing is going to be more effective on him if you get a rune like a haste rune. That's where you can look to be aggressive. So again, even though I get a rune, you see the mana runs out pretty quickly. So what do? I bottle Crow, and my team, they're pretty much fine with this. The Venomancers had opportunities to go to shop. The tri-lane, the lane is pushed, so anything they need, they can pretty much get from the side shop. We have our wards up. As long as all the basics are up and in play, I highly recommend the bottle Crowing. So this is the Pinoy style for Dragon Knight. It's something we've seen a lot. I mentioned Mineski is a big team who does it. I'm not gonna say I'm executing it perfectly, but this is the general style. You get an early hand of Midas. The reason for that is because you want to farm, you want to push aggressively, and you want to get fat for the late game. The other reason you get hand of Midas, and this is a big one on Dragon Knight. I talked in the sort of the prelude here about how level dependent he is as a carry. And one of the ways to mitigate that is to get an early hand of Midas, especially if you eat big jungle creeps. It will really accelerate your leveling process. And actually, let's take a look. Where is my level chart?
Middle tower is under attack.
Yeah, see, I'm already level 9. Even though I ganked bottom, I'm pretty far ahead of the Pudge. About halfway to level 10, so decent lead there. And you're gonna see with this hand of Midas, it only accelerates. So the quicker you hit 16, the quicker you reach your full potential. Some confusion over here as Morphley wanted to TP in, but he got stunned, so he's not gonna be able to. But again, pressuring the lane, forcing Pudge to come back, picking up the runes. CM drops a ward, she sees me, and she's gonna Nova me, but really what can she do? Again, I have an invis rune picked up. So even if they go on me, I saw they had no detection, so I would be absolutely fine. The Dragon form used again, I'm using it pretty liberally, and if you're trying to gank a little bit more, you might want to save it because it does give you a range stun. And I actually get hooked here, and I think I'm gonna feed. Yep. Now, a little bit sloppy by me. I don't think I saw CM actually place that ward. But this is one of those things where every time you see a player show up in your lane, or really on the street, immediately click on them, check their inventory. If I did that, I would have seen CM had wards. Then when I checked her again, I would have seen she was missing one. And then I would know there's a ward on the high ground. Now, I choose to buy back here. The main reason I do it is because I have a Hand of Midas cooldown available, and also the latest pushing. This is a situation where the buyback cost me a couple hundred gold, but I'm going to make it back almost immediately with the Midas, and I get a little bit of levels. I also can continue to farm and press the lane. So early on, never be afraid to buy back, especially if you can make something good happen. On top of it, I'm probably gonna get a tier 1 here. The glyph was already used, I think. No, maybe not. I do last hit the tower. So the first component of the item build, I talked about that. The Hand of Midas pickup to get levels as quickly as possible, to accelerate your farm, and it's also a decent DPS item for DK because he's a strength hero and he really lacks attack speed. So any attack speed you get is going to pay big dividends on him later on. Alright, we'll go ahead and fast forward a little bit. And I spot him at the rune. I'm going to get hooked. I'm going to die again. So me just kind of feeding here. Nothing to see here, guys. If you want to check the rune and you're up against Pudge, you got to be a little bit less lazy with your movement. I just kind of stand there. So I get picked off, I go down. There were multiple heroes off the map, and I was just playing greedy. I just really wanted the rune. I was like, they're not going to check it. Not really respecting my opponents, and they punished me for it. So I respawn, and we're going to see, I do a lot of farming here in the mid-game, and do I really die a third time? No, I'm going to be fine.
Radiant's top tower is under attack.
A little bit sloppy play for me here and there, but ultimately not dying yet. Charging in, really trying my best to feed. Finally we get our Sven shows up, but he has no mana, so I really don't know what he's hoping to accomplish here. If you're going to play a hero like Sven, especially if you're playing a support role, make sure that you actually have mana to do something. Wang's Big blinks in, Wang's Big sleeps himself. Pretty much just a comedy of errors here from our team. So, I'm going to go back to farming, which is something I really should have been doing more of. A little bit less trying to get runes, a little bit less trying to gank, because my contribution... Oh, no! Oh, that ward on the high ground has just absolutely destroyed me here. Well, stunned again. Hooked again, stunned again. I'm eating all the hooks, but you can see how good Dragonite is at dealing with that, because every time you get hooked, you just pop a Dragon Tail and you're absolutely fine. If Pudge is really quick on the Dismember, he can kill you. And am I going to get hooked a third time? This time, I have learned my lesson. I don't walk on top of the rune, I walk to the right of it. Wang's Big now spots him out, Wang's Big ults him, and the creeps are doing some work. And he's going to get denied here. Oh boy, so a lot of mistakes, but the important thing is not whether or not you make the mistakes, it's recognizing them. Here, what I should have done, wait to use the Flame Breath until he's a lot lower in terms of HP. I really overestimate how much damage it would do because he's got that 1 point flesh drain. So again, do as I say, not as I do, I guess is the moral of today's story. Either way, we do get a kill. I'm just going to keep on pressuring this middle lane.
Dire's bottom tower
and with the Arcane Boots and Omnis, that's going to fuel my nuke spam a lot. Level 10 already, getting close to level 11 here. Still pushing reasonably well, but with 3 heroes bottom, I may be forced back. We're going to have to see if I actually do it. Nope, Power Charge picked up, and a TP scroll. So if I want to back, I can. TP in bottom, the ult is up. And I'm coming to help my team. The reason is because my team is telling me, let's fight. We have a Blink Dagger at our Bane. We have some pretty good damage dealers with the Sven as well. If they weren't telling me to fight, I would be farming and pushing. But we're going to get a couple of kills here. Flame Breath's going to clean that one up. And overall, a great engagement for our team. I'm really not contributing all that much, but just being in the front lines, tanking. DK is a hero that contributes simply by being in the fight, whether it's spamming Dragon Tail or just soaking up a lot of damage from the enemy team. And I'm not even going for the tanky build, but you can already see I'm pretty damn tanky. 16 armor, 1200 HP. And now we're going to push. The level 1 Flame Breath will help quite a bit in this regard. You can see that it does affect towers, does an extra 20 damage over time. I thought Pudge was behind the tower. I told my team to go for him. And instead, one hero gets hooked. Now I'm on the back foot, running away. Juggernaut's scared. He's not going to chase. And we're all going to live. Okay. So, this is kind of a boring phase of the game. I'm just going to back. Hey, this is... okay. Yeah, my team's feeding. I told them back. They didn't listen. What can you do? Cut your losses, especially if you're going for a farming style as a carry. You don't want to waste too much time. You don't want to waste your precious lives trying to help your team out. One other thing I want to point out that you're going to see I start to do now that I have my treads up, and this is even more important if you have a bottle, is switch your treads to intelligence whenever you're about to cast a nuke. The reason for that is that it will use a flat amount of mana, but your overall mana will increase when you switch the treads to intelligence, so you use a smaller percentage. I'm going to be going for my next big item, and this addresses the second big weakness of DK that I talked about. That weakness is his lack of mobility. I have a Claymore picked up. No, this is not a Battle Fury. Not a Battle Fury at all. And Pudge tries to fight me one-on-one. Not the smartest decision he's ever made. He's probably going to pay for this. I have a haste rune. And there's a sleep, and there's nuke, and he dies. But I am going for a Lothar's, also known as a Shadow Blade in Dota 2. Now the reason for this, there's two main reasons I get it. Well, actually, I'll say two. One of them is for chasing and initiating. So, just for fighting, basically. That's the first main reason you get it. You have a ranged stun. Now you have a ranged stun that's 2.5 seconds long. Although I'm choosing to level it this game. Normally I don't recommend doing this. This might have been a misclick. But whether you're leveling it or not, 2.5 second, pretty spammable stun that's range, 400 range. If you're shadow blading in, this is a great way to initiate. So it's like having a blink dagger or force staff. If your opponents are really smart, yeah, sure, in theory they can buy wards. They could just walk around with the gem. But that's a big investment for the supports. And you're a hero, you're happy to spend the gold because you have a hand of Midas, you're farming pretty well. So the gold cost really doesn't impact you, but it really hurts their supports if they want to defend it. Plus, it's kind of like playing against a Riki. Are you really gonna have wards everywhere? Probably not. You can only really afford so many sentry wards on your support. So I go for Shadow Blade. Great initiation. That's number one. The other reason I pick it up is to allow me to push more aggressively and then get away without really being gankable. It's nice to have the ability to. It's nice to have the invisibility, but just the move speed buff can be enough to escape in a lot of situations. You'll see when mineski play. If you ever watched the mineski Dota 1 game, well, I highly recommend you do if you haven't, by the way. Very entertaining team to watch, and they have a very unique style. All the Pinoys do, but especially mineski. But what they do with their Dragonite is he'll just constantly be pressuring lanes by himself, pushing really aggressively, and then as soon as he notices a couple heroes missing, just Shadow Blade, either go hide in the trees or TP out. And really, what can they do at that point? So I'm doing the split pushing part of this equation. Although I'm not really actually... don't have the Shadow Blade yet, but I know there's a bunch of heroes, so what am I going to do? I'm going to ignore the fight, I'm going to push. Again, I'm contributing to the team by pressuring. Sure, I could team fight with the DD. I might do a lot, but once I have the Shadow Blade up, that's where I feel like make a big impact. The other reason it's great for chasing is not just the move speed, but also the fact that it lets you run through creeps. Sure, you can get phase boots, but again, DK is a strength here. He really needs attack speed to do big damage in the late game. So to me, this is a better build if you want to be a damage dealer. Instead of phase boots, you get the Shadow Blade, you get some damage, you get some chasing potential. You can pass through creeps, but you also have great attack speed. And the Shadow Blade picked up. I'm continuing to bottle Crow, and hey, why the hell not? It's 21 minutes in. The team probably doesn't need it too much now. And here we go. We're going to catch out Morphling. He's morphing to strength, but you can see, doesn't matter. Let's watch that one again. In slow motion. So, Morphling has no wards. Normally Morphling will be absolutely fine here. Because even if we initiate, he can just waveform out, morph to strength. But he doesn't know that I have a DD rune and I'm into this. So I walk in. We stack our stuns pretty bad, but you can see the burst damage. It really just lets you get on top of your opponents before they know what hit them. So again, this build is very strong for split pushing. It's very strong for ganking. Where it's not going to help you as much is if you want to be grouping up as 5, going for a team push. If you do, then things like Pipe, things like Assault Cuirass, Drums, BKB, those will be much better item pickups in more of a 5v5 Dota kind of game. It's also not going to help you a whole lot if the enemy team is trying to force a fight. So whether it's a team fight, whether it's your team trying to push or their team trying to push, this build is much more focused on split pushing, farming, and trying to go late game, standing toe-to-toe with the enemy carry. So I'm already level 14. I just want to point this out. It's 21.5 minutes in. I am level 14, and let's actually compare the levels here. I've been ganking a lot, and I'm... God damn it. There we go. I'm level 14. Their Morphling got first blood. He's been farming a lot. He really hasn't done too much team fighting. And he's only 12. Even the Pudge, who's gotten a bunch of kills. The Pudge is 4, 3, and 3. He's only level 13. And look at our Bade. 6, 1, and 7, only level 12. This is the hand of Midas talking. I'm farming a lot, sure. I do have the most creep score, the most last hits in the game. But if it weren't for the hand of Midas, I wouldn't be this close to level 16. At the rate I'm going, I'm going to have 16 in the next 5 or so minutes. And that means heroes like Enchantress, Crystal Maiden, Juggernaut, Pudge, all these heroes won't be able to run for me. Even Morphling could be in some trouble. Especially with Shadow Blade. Between Shadow Blade, Dragon Tail, and having Elder Dragon form level 3, you can chase like none other. So, Juggernaut tries to fight with me here. Unfortunately, I'm out of mana because I'm parrying that bottle. If it was there, I would have been able to kill him. You can see, again, microing the tread, switch to agility treads before you actually use the bottle. I get a lot more mana out of it this way. The rune spawns, I check, I see it's not there, I see it's bottom, so I'm going to bottle Crow again. If you're going to bottle Crow, you might as well commit to it. Now, again, if the team needs it, you don't want to be selfish. But if they don't need it, if they're not asking for it, by all means, go ahead. So I saw 4 top. I know they're all here. I'm begging my team to fight. Use the DK form, Shadow Bladed, and look at the initiation of the burst damage we have. Crystal Maiden melts, Morphling will follow shortly thereafter, can't even live through it. A lot of right-click damage, primarily from this fan, but I'm doing some decent right-clicks of my own. And now, well, Juggernaut tries to use his ult, he's gonna go down. Double kill for me. And sure, we'd probably get at least 1 or 2 of these kills without me having the Shadow Blade, but having it just means we have that little bit of extra initiation, a little bit of extra lockdown. Whereas, normally if you charge it as Dragon Knight, they might be able to run away. Here, they absolutely can't. With the Shadow Blade, I can stun again, and we get the kill. So Enchantress goes down, 4 kills going our way. In these kinds of fights, this is a perfect build for this game. And you can see I'm level 16 after just that one fight, so it actually only took me 2 more minutes. Now's where I start to get really scary. So I continue to bottle Crow. And if you ever watch Pinoy Dota, they will do it until 30-40 minutes if they need to. Now, I wouldn't say I'm quite as dedicated, but I'm pretty close. And I really think it's undervalued because a lot of the times the couriers are sitting at the base. You might as well do it. Especially in a hero like DK who really needs the mana regen. And I didn't have to go for a soul ring, so I'm sitting on a bottle. I'm also getting to put runes in it. You've seen a couple of DDs, haste runes on me. I really am a big believer in the bottle Crow. In certain games, this is definitely one of them. So I'm pushing. I have the Shadow Blade, 3.8k gold. Now, I've talked a lot about initiating, I've talked a lot about chasing. The other component to me of this build is kind of play DK like a Morphling. Being a bit more of a burst damage style hero, or even someone like a Tiny. To me, this DK build, sure, you chase, you split push, that's great. But you also want to play him like an assassin, and that's how I choose to itemize this game. I go for big damage items. You're going to see my next item that I choose is a Daedalus. This is a lot different from your traditional DK. If you watch pro DKs, like I said, normally they build tanky, they build kind of a survivable, I'm never going to have to leave the fight style. And it's a great way to play DK. It's very effective in a lot of games, but especially in pub games, to me, burst damage is king, and DK can provide it with this attack speed, with the Shadow Blade to get the jump on heroes, but you need a lot of damage on top of it to do so. So my next item is going to be Daedalus, and with the level 3 Dragon form, with the Daedalus pickup, I will have that burst damage. You're going to see I'm able to just assassinate heroes very quickly. So I'm farming, 5k gold in the bank, 26 minutes in. Pick up an Invis rune and the Shadow Blade, so plenty of ways. If you ever have an Invis and a Shadow Blade, I highly recommend use the Shadow Blade to initiate and hold on to that Invis rune, and then you can use it to get away if you're in a bad spot. So, I'm taking some harassment mid, but what do? I Shadow Blade, and they have Dust. They full Pudge 4-staffed in and tried to chase me, but the move speed. Sometimes that's all you need. It doesn't matter if they see you. Just that little bit of extra move speed, the ability to pass through creeps. It lets you escape. Now, again, not perfect initiation by my opponents, but this is a pub game. Generally, pubs are not going to have perfect initiation, so I really think it's a viable way to play in pub games. I know there are skeptics out there. I'm not even reading the stream chat right now, but I know you guys. I know there are a lot of people like, yeah, this is a little bit funky. It's not really going to work. If your opponents were smarter, if they played perfect, it wouldn't be effective. But that's the point, is everybody's human. Pub opponents especially are not perfect. So, team fight breaks out. Level 3 ult form popped. I haven't spent my 5.5k gold. I just want to point out, this is a big mistake by me not spending that gold. I have an MKB now if I want it. I have a Daedalus pretty much if I want it. I'm a little bit off of it. Still, I don't think it's gonna matter. No, it is. I go down. So imagine if I had that damage item. And this goes back to something I talked about in my last episode. Whenever you have gold, spend it immediately. Don't hold on to it. We saw in the Spectre game I was pretty good about it. This game, I was just playing greedy. We were way ahead. So like, I don't really need to spend my gold right now. I was up to almost 6k and I didn't spend it. If I had that extra damage item, I'd probably get 3 or 4 kills there. But not a big deal. We're still ahead overall. I'm still very fat. Level, I want to say 17 or 18 at this point. 18 at this point. So we're going to fast forward through all of this action. And we're going to see, I just want to fast forward to this point where I get the next big damage item up. So 5.6k, I get the crit stick, get the Daedalus, big team fight breaks out. And I haven't used the Shadow, or I did use the Shadow Blade to escape there. And now you're going to see I turn around on New Enchantress, pretty big burst damage. I know she's dead, so I actually just go to shop while that's happening. With Daedalus up, my damage will be a lot bigger now. We're gonna go for Roshan, and this is something I have not really talked about with DK, but he's a pretty horrible candidate to hold in Aegis. There's 2 reasons for this. One of them is, he's so tanky, especially if you build him tanky, that he really should never die. The other and the more important point is, if you put an Aegis on the DK, this is a hero that when he respawns, he doesn't respawn in his ultimate form. And you probably heard me mention this in cast before, but it means that he's really not the best Aegis candidate because it's not the same hero. It's like a Panda who doesn't have his ult. Or Pandar and Brewmaster, I should say. Just not nearly as effective. So, I pick up the Aegis just because, well, it's a pub. I'm playing a little selfishly. And I am the biggest hero on my team overall. But really, DK is not the ideal candidate. Now, I will say in this game, because of the build I've gone for, even though I'm not ranged, I kind of am, because I can Shadow Blade in, get the stuns off, and then do the big right click. So in this game, I think it fits a little bit better. And Pudge whiffs a hook. Shadow Blade's going to help me escape. Even if they kill me once I had the Aegis, then that could be a big turnaround for our team. So they're wisely not going to try and force the issue. And just a little bit of farming now. We're going to fast forward to the big all mid push that's coming up. So, Shadow Blade in. Crystal Mating is picked off, and you can see the burst damage. She's just going to melt instantly. One more right click will do the trick. One more right... There you go. So even though she holds me in place for a good couple of seconds there, with that frostbite, it's not enough. And now the chase is on. Shadow Blade forward. We're going to catch out Enchantress. In these situations, it's really such a great build. And the burst damage. The crit for 600. She can't get her heal up. Not able to survive. I believe what I go for next is Satanic, just for a little bit of extra tank. Now, if you want to go all in on burst, you can go for things like a Hyperstone, something like an Assault Cuirass or Mjolnir. Even a Mask of Madness can be very legitimate, and it gives you amazing chasing power, but it does make you pretty squishy. We're going to see, one thing I haven't talked about this game, and I'll mention it now, DK is a hero, there's a lot of ways to play him. If you want, you can actually stack Ancients very effectively, get a Helm of the Dominator, take over a big creep. By a big creep, I mean something like this Dark Troll Warlord here, a Centaur over here, and then you can send that creep to continuously stack the Ancients. Then if you have a Helm of the Dominator, maybe even Armlet as well, you can farm these Ancients with your level 2 or level 3 Dragon form. It's like a Tinker with March Spam, very good way to increase your gold per minute without having to buy an expensive item to do so. I opted for Midas, and I felt like it was enough gold, but there are definitely other options. So, Juggernaut gets caught out. Juggernaut's going to go down. And we fast forward to that last big team fight that's coming up right about now. Shadow Blading in, able to initiate, catching up with Pudge. I don't really have vision here. Then we see Pudge, we get a glimpse of him at the tower, and he's screwed. Stun to start, couple of auto attacks. Look how quickly he melts there. That's the crits working, that's the damage build. Really helping out. And I will also mention, because we're on Dire, it's a little bit easier to play aggressively because I'm likely to have an Aegis. And here we go. Spot out CM, stun to start. Taking a lot of damage, but once I start auto-attacking, you're going to see I tank pretty effectively. One more crit does the trick. Morphling comes in. He will kill me, but I have Aegis. And you're going to see even a melee Dragon Knight with this build can easily catch out the Morphling. Shadow Blade in, stun to start, the right clicks to follow, and he's just going to melt. The burst, this is a build about burst damage, about chasing, and about getting pickoffs. This is a very different way to play DK, but I think it's pretty damn effective. Especially if you get a good start. Especially if your opponents don't shut you down early. Because you do need to get in hand of Midas. You do need to bottle Crow, so there's some restrictions. But once you have that good start, you can see heroes just melt. And you also are able to farm aggressively all over the map without too many words. That pretty much does it. The enemy team plays the blame game. I just continue padding my stats. But that's going to do it for this particular episode of Getting That Ass Larry. So I really hope you guys found it informative. Let's jump into the webcam, and if you guys have questions, I will now answer them. So let me see if my faithful mods have been doing their work. Nope, the mods are missing. Okay, guys. So question time. I'm not going to be able to scroll up through the chat and read everything. So if you have a question, feel free to repost it now. Whether it's about the build, the Pinoy dragon style that dragon knight style that I showed, or whether it's about the hero in general, even things like Sully Mid, but anything pertinent to what we talked about today. 5 or 10 minutes or so for questions. Titme asks, why weren't you utilizing the bonus Shadow Blade damage? Well, I should be. That's a great point. Sometimes I'm a little bit sloppy, but really what you want to do, ideally, is Shadow Blade in, right-click one time to get the bonus, 150 damage, I believe, and then use your Dragon Tail. But for me, mostly I just need to get the stun off, and almost every single one of those ganks, they were squishy enough, and we had enough follow-up stuns that as long as you get that first stun, they're gonna die. But if your opponents are tankier, if they're more survivable, if you're maybe not as far ahead, then yeah, you do want to get that one right click off coming out of Shadowblade first. So it's a great point. All I can say is I'm not a pro, I'm not perfect, but it's a great point that you're making, Tippy. When playing this DK in this style, it feels kind of like a better pushing Skeleton King. Agree or disagree? S knock. It kind of reminds me of 4-staff Skeleton King, so I'm with you there. The one thing I will say is, because DK is that ranged form, he's a much higher impact hero in team fights later on. So I don't know if anybody's watched pro games, but a couple of months ago, I know Complexity is one of the teams that were doing this. They were playing Skeleton King as a hard carry. Not really as a hard carry, though, but they'd play him as one of their farmers, and they'd rush a 4-staff. And then he becomes a very tanky initiator. So you 4-staff in, you use your Hellfire Blast, and then your team jumps in. Even if the enemy team tries to kill you once, well, you resurrect, you come back to life. DK sort of fits this build because it sort of fits the bill in a similar respect because he's a tanky hero that can charge and initiate. But the difference is DK offers you a lot more later on because he has a ranged form, because his splash will slow you. Sure, he doesn't have 2 lives, but overall he's going to do a lot more damage in team fights. Ranged heroes are just generally better in those late game engagements. But it's a great point you're making. He is, with this build, it's not a team fight hero. It's not really a team fight build, although you can if you get big enough. It's not really for that 5v5 pushing style. It's much more so for finding ganks, split pushing, spreading the map, playing more like a Morphling maybe, or an Anti-Mage with a Battle Fury, which personally, that's more of a comfortable way for me to play. And I think it's a little bit better in pubs too, because, well, you're less likely to get caught out on your own, and pubs are not always going to be there to help you, so it gives you a backup plan. What color do you think DK's nipples are? Whatever color form he's in. So if he's level 1 ultimate, they're green. If it's level 2, they're red. If it's 3, they're probably blue. Yeah, he's a freaky dude. Lemon Rind. With DK, thanks to Dragon Blood, do you really not need regen on him at the start? Let me move Skype over here. You do need regen on him. This is a big... even though he's got Dragon's Blood, it'll help you a lot dealing with harassment, but most games you're going to be up against some form of harassment with DK, whether it's a hero like Windrunner or Crystal Maiden, even a dual lane with some stuns. This was a kind of unusual game because a 1v1 and a 1v1 against a very weak lane in here, that being Pudge. You need regen HP-wise most of the time. More importantly, you need mana regen. So whether it's a bottle, whether it's a soul ring, Flame Breath is very spammable, or Breathe Fire, but I call it Flame Breath. So you do need regen. It's a big mistake that a lot of people make. Now don't go overboard. You don't need as much as other heroes, but you really want to be able to spam his spells, not just the Breathe Fire, but also things like Dragon Tail. And the ultimate's pretty cheap, but sometimes you need a little bit extra to deal with it. Rapezilla asks, oh, that's not a nice name. Well, Zilla asks, why get a Midas if you could get the Shadow Blade faster to pressure them early? The reason you get the Hand of Midas is so that you level faster. And the reason you want to level quickly is because Dragonite becomes a completely different hero once he hits level 16. Dark Sonic Con 24. Can you replace Bottle with Soul Ring? Yes, absolutely. I like Bottle better because it's a little bit cheaper. You can also, it's got more uses to it. It's not just regen. It also lets you get runes, which helps you with ganking. Plus, I was going solo mid, so really I should be controlling the runes. If I was up against a Queen of Pain, someone who's I'm never going to get the runes, then I would have either just Bottle Crowed exclusively, or I would have done something like just get a Soul Ring. So you don't have to get Bottle. I think if you're going solo mid, generally it'll be a bit better, but you certainly don't have to. Lemon Ryan asks, are there any other heroes that can play that sort of style? Yeah, there are. Split pushing sort of initiation. Morphling's a great example. Sure, he doesn't have a stun, but it's an assassin. I mean, that's really what this build boils down to in the mid to late game. It's like an Ethereal Blade Morphling. You just want to assassinate the squishies, get the pickoffs here and there, and snowball your way to victory in team fights, rather than just clashing head on and just overwhelming them with superior strength. You do it with a little bit more finesse, sort of weaving in and out. So there are other heroes that can play it. Let me actually bring up my list of Dota heroes and see if I can think of anyone else. Lifestealer with a Basher might be another good example because you're guaranteed to get a couple up. I think even Huskar can work. He doesn't have a stun, so it's a little bit harder to get solo kills, and he doesn't split push nearly as well. But as far as the killing goes, he definitely has that potential. Who else can do it? Bounty Hunter a little bit, but he doesn't push. I think DK is kind of unique because you can go this build and you still offer a lot in team fights because you're ranged here. You have a stun. It's something that a lot of other carries don't have. They have. It's what I talked about earlier. He's just so versatile. He's a ranged hero late on in the game. He's got a slow. He's got a stun. He also does good right click damage with items. So sure, other carries will have some of these things, but all of them, I don't think there's really anyone else who quite fits that same role. Okay, let's see. Any other good questions for the chat? Hi, Slow Oranges. Palm Tree Fun asks, does Spectre work with this style? No, Spectre does not work with this style. He doesn't have a way to flash farm. He doesn't have Breathe Fire. He doesn't have a spammable nuke. Dagger is a very long cooldown, and it doesn't do much damage to creeps anyway. He doesn't have an ultimate to push the tower. He's missing a lot of the prerequisites, but most importantly, Spectre can't solo gank unless he's got a lot of items, because he doesn't have a stun. He's a decent chaser, but he's not an amazing one. So Spectre is really not a good fit for this style. We saw last week, Spectre needs a lot of items before he can really get going. She. Damn it. Alright, it. I'm going to call it it. Data Carnage asks, why don't we see DK in pro play lately? Well, we do see him occasionally. There's some teams that like him. DK, the team, actually likes Dragonite. Complexity likes him from time to time. I think Bottom Bottom has run him a few times, although they normally favor things like the Lone Druid and Morphling a little bit more. I think Bottom Bottom's run it. Maybe I'm thinking of someone else. He does see some play. The thing about it is, as strong as his late game could be, he needs a lot of items to get there. And he's not a great hero in the laning phase. Sure, you can spam Flame Breath, you can push the creep wave, but in a pro game, you're not going to be matched up against a Pudge 1v1 as DK. You're going to have a much more difficult lane. Or, if you have an easy lane, they have some hard carry, like a Morphling, who just does what DK does a little bit better with less items in terms of finding pickoffs. All right, everybody, I think that about does it for today. Great questions all around. Bigger turnout than I expected, to be totally honest. Thank you all so much for tuning in. If you found this one helpful, I'm glad to hear it. Please follow me on Twitch, follow me on Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, all of those /LDdota. One of my mods, if you could put the links in the stream chat, that would be fantastic. If you enjoy the show, if you want to see more, please tell your friends about it. The more people are tuning in, the easier it will be for us to make this content on an ongoing basis. Although I personally love doing it, and I will do it as much as I can regardless. But I'm loving the big turnout, guys. Really big thanks to all you for showing up. I hope you all learned something. If you have feedback on how the episodes can be improved, feel free to email it to me at ld@lddota.com. That's my email address. That's the best way to reach me. That's going to do it for today's content. Also, I will say, I think my best episode yet was actually, probably not this one, it was the one on Monday. So if you haven't watched it yet, that was an episode about how to land with Earthshaker as a support here. I highly recommend checking that out, especially if you're a newer player. You can find all the VODs at youtube.com/LDdota and dotacommentaries.com. We're undergoing a website revamping. We're rebuilding it. But soon there will be a section just for the Dota show, and then you'll be able to find everything in one place. But for the next few days, youtube.com/LDdota. If you missed any of today, if you missed any of the other previous days, that's the place to go to catch up. There are links at the bottom, but people have a way of not looking at them. Shiny. So there you go. Okay, that's going to do it for today, guys. I just want to mention for tomorrow. Tomorrow we have the 2 inventory slot challenge. Again, it will be starting at 10 p.m. Eastern time. And for that one, you can tune into Luminous's channel, twitch.tv/luminousinverse, 10 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. Pacific, 4 a.m. Central European Summertime. If you guys are so bold or messed up with your sleep schedules like me to be up that late, then definitely tune in. So that challenge, it's more of a fun, relaxing day, but the only rule is you can only have 2 items in your inventory at any given time. That's going to do it for today, guys. Please tell your friends, spread the word about the show if you enjoyed it. We'll be back tomorrow on Luminous's channel at 10 p.m.